Hi everyone, welcome to Mummy Matters. Our guest is an incredibly strong mother who has used her personal journey of baby loss to help and support other parents. An ambassador for SAN's charity, it's KSAVI Sheetal Joshi.
Thank you, Raki, for inviting me on. We've got lots of commonalities of things that we talk about and share. We're both makeup artists. I know you were a makeup artist in a previous kind of career. We're both Joshis, so we kind of come from the same sort of community, and we're connected as mums.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, we connected through Instagram. That's how we kind of found each other, and some of the content that I was sharing, it resonated to Raki and to the people that were asking her some questions. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Sheetal Savi Joshi. On Instagram, you'll find me as Savi Joshi. And I'm a mum to three beautiful boys, Avi, Shivai, and Kai. And my journey really on Instagram started with me being a makeup artist several years ago. I started that journey and was putting out all my work there. And along the way, in parallel, I was expanding my family as well with becoming a mum. And I started using Instagram as a way of sort of talking about some things that I was going through and experiencing. Firstly, miscarriage. So we were trying to conceive a second baby, and unfortunately, we suffered 3 miscarriages. And then Shivai came along, and he was born prematurely at 29 weeks. And I used those platforms to talk about kind of my journey with motherhood and what I was feeling around the kind of miscarriage and the loss that I was experiencing, and then having our own rainbow baby in Shivai. And then unfortunately, we lost him to a viral bacterial bug, which is kind of a similar sort of bug to COVID. And that was 7 years ago. That was really, it's almost like a defining moment in my life, because I think until then, I was just surviving through life and just coping with career and work and home and being a mum to Avi. And then when we lost Shivai, it really kind of opened up all the things that I had experienced over the years, and his loss as well, and also the loss of the miscarriages, and really kind of taking a very harsh look at kind of what I was feeling, what I was expressing, how I was behaving. And not all of those feelings were positive feelings. They were quite negative feelings. There was a lot of self-talk negatively that was going on. I knew that I wasn't coping very well at that time, and understandably was not going to be able to sort of naturally be the same happy-go-lucky person that I was before, because a major sort of trauma had happened into our life. And so that was when I kind of started to engage in a down the road of self-discovery, I should say, meditation and coaching, which had never really been a part of my life ever. All of a sudden, those doors opened for me, and I felt that they were the best ways for me to try and understand what I was feeling. And so in that journey, that's when I started to talk more openly about grief, about loss of any form, about miscarriage, about baby loss, about the impact it was having on me and my family, and sharing it on my platform in the most authentic way that I could share it. And that was when it started to open up kind of a lot of sort of connections to other people that were going through similar things, and actually connecting with people, and now having established some really meaningful friendships because of what we had all kind of connected and been through. And I feel like it's only I feel like I'm it's a bittersweet kind of moment, because I feel like my life is much more meaningful now than it was before I even had Shivai. But that's probably because the trauma, the loss has all made me really do a lot of inner work on myself, and a lot of work on supporting my family. And therefore I feel like I'm in a better place now. But it's just such a bittersweet moment because Shivai's not in our life. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and what I do on my platforms, and how we got connected, and why you wanted me to come on to this podcast today.
I just think it's amazing how incredibly strong it is, because losing a baby is probably like the worst thing ever. I don't think anyone can even contemplate how hard it must be for you, for you to be able to use that to be able to help other families, other parents. I think it's an amazing thing you're doing, and it's I think it's great that you're doing this, because you're able to connect a lot more people, because I know it has a lot of stigma connected to it. So many people choose not to talk about these things, whereas you actually bring it out and say, no, actually talk about these things, because it just brings everyone together, strengthens you. And like you're saying, you're coming out a lot stronger than you are, which I think is it's inspiring, really. So yeah.
Grief is a very personal journey, and it doesn't matter whether that's the grief of a baby that has been born, or a miscarriage, or the grief of an adult that played a significant part in your life. I get many people saying that, I just can't imagine what you've gone through, compared to the person that I've lost, who was living for another 70, 80 years. And I always say to them, there's no one grief that is worse than the other. It is just a personal grief. And it's what that person that you've lost meant to you in your life. And so I think, generally speaking, there's a massive taboo around grieving anyway, and talking about death. And I couldn't say the word death for so long, or I couldn't say Shivai died. Like, that word died or dead, I could not say that for so long. And now, because we talk about it so openly in our family, and because my children ask me, Kai will always ask me, who's my youngest son, he'll say to me stuff like, is Shivai dead? Is Shivai with the angels then? Did daddy die? And the children just say it, just say it without any emotion connected to it. And that forced us to sort of like start talking about death in a bigger way at home, and in a kind of way that was almost as normal as we would talk about somebody having a baby, in the same kind of way. And we've had to sort of like face up and explain to him, yes, Shivai, your brother, who you haven't met ever and you will never meet, he did die. And this is how he died. And yes, he has gone to the angels, if that's what you want to think, but mummy thinks that he's gone to another realm, and then he keeps going up these realms, so I sort of sometimes talk about it in that kind of way. My husband talks about it that he's an angel now. And Avi will talk about him, he did die and he's in the sky now. So I think death in general, and grief and loss, baby loss, certainly, I think there's something so tragic about losing a baby, that sometimes people might have gone through it themselves and necessarily won't want to talk about it in a much more public way. So for example, when I had the miscarriages, I didn't talk about it as much as I talked about Shivai dying, and that was probably because it was so personal to me and Karthik that I didn't want everybody knowing about my business. So I think sometimes we can judge people that, they're not, I'm grieving because I've lost my baby, and this person hasn't even come to talk to me about it. But actually, you don't know what they've gone through and what they're not maybe sharing. And so I think in this journey, we've become so much more accepting of when people do want to support you, and then sometimes why they don't support you.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I know in the beginning, I used to think that person hasn't really called me on, and that makes me feel really bad because I thought we were really good friends, and I feel quite let down. But actually, over the years, I've just come to realize actually everybody goes through their own things, and you know, you do realize like who is there for you and who's maybe not part of your crowd anymore, and that is totally fine, because people are like seasons, right? People come in and out to help you at a point in life, and I think we're just very accepting of that.
Yeah.
But death in our life, and talking about death and talking about grief and loss, you know, we've had the miscarriages, we've lost Shivai, we lost my father-in-law the year after Shivai died, and then, you know, almost 2 years coming up this year, we lost my mother-in-law. So we were a family of 7 that went down to 4. So the children have gone through a lot of grief of different people in their lives. And so it's forced us to really, really take care of ourselves, to do some inner work around that, support ourselves first and foremost, then support each other. And then as a family, you know, like be counseled and have therapy and you know, day-to-day conversations always come up. You know, it's usually Kai, because Kai is now 6 years old. So he's beginning to understand a lot more things.
Yeah.
And he'll ask things like, well, why won't I see Shivai? So he doesn't comprehend that there's no pictures of him, or there's hardly any pictures of him and Shivai together. Like, why are all my pictures with Avi, mummy? You know, so, and we explained to him that, you know, he was your older brother and he died before you came. But mummy, I've got pictures with Avi, so why haven't I got pictures with Shivai? You know, so, and it just forces you to talk.
Yeah.
It just forces you to have those questions, you know. And even with Avi, you know, a few years ago, he kept saying to me, Mommy, why'd you keep crying about Shivai? You know, he died, get over it. And I know he didn't mean it in that kind of way. But, you know, his experience of growing up has been that anytime I think about Shivai, there's loss associated with it. There's a grief, there's a sadness associated. There's me crying all the time about it, you know, and he's in a different place now. He's kind of like, you know, I talked to a therapist about this, and you know, initially when he said that to us, we were both shocked. We were both really, really shocked about it. And then we thought, no, you know, let's sit and think at his experience of this. And you know, Avi is the sort of child who's happy-go-lucky, just wants to get on with life and just get on with what he's doing, kind of thing. And it made us realize that actually maybe Avi doesn't want to talk about Shivai right now, and we do want to talk about him. And sometimes we've got to realize that actually, you know what, the other person, because every single one of us in our household has dealt with the grief in a very different way. And Avi's at that stage where maybe just right now, it's not something that he wants to process or deal with, or have to see us deal with day to day. And maybe that, you know, the therapist was saying his time could come, like he may have a moment where he goes to university and he's away from you, or when he becomes a father, that, you know, the grief of losing his brother might come up again, and therefore, you know, you need to be prepared for that. So, oh goodness, you know, like this journey, it doesn't end with just like, you know, the loss of the baby. It's like the impact that it leaves you with, and the things that you have to work through as a family. It's really tough. It's really, really hard.
Yeah. I mean, going back to when you were talking about you've become more accepting, people who are there and people who probably aren't there as much as you thought they would be. Do you think that's because people just don't know what to say? Because obviously, you know, it's a double-edged sword almost. If you say something, it might be taken wrong. If you know, and then some people just refrain from it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in your opinion, what are, say, the top 3 things not to say when you're trying to, you know, deal with stuff like this? Like, I mean, what did you find not helpful to help you grieve?
Yeah, I mean, I just remember there was a few people, I'd say maturer generations, there were a few people similar age to me who said, oh, well, at least you've got Avi. And it was almost like dismissing that Shivai ever even existed in our life, you know, or very soon after Shivai died, I found out I was pregnant with Kai.
Yeah.
And you know, a few people said, oh, at least you've got Kai now, he can help.
Yeah.
And but that, you know, that is just really, really unhelpful. It almost dismisses kind of that baby being a part of your life or your journey, or, you know, even existing. You know, like Shivai will always be a part of our life. I will always say I'm a mum to 3 boys. You'll never ever catch me saying I'm just a mum to 2 boys. You know, because I'm not. I'm a mum to 3. And you know what, Avi just celebrated his 13th birthday. You know, it was emotional. You know, there's one child that's going to be a teenager. I think about Shivai, like, you know, what would he be like if he was a teenager? You know, like, what would that dynamic be of the 3 brothers together versus the 2 brothers together? So I cannot, like, you know, not think about Shivai every day. Like, I probably think about him every few minutes. I think about him, you know, I just can't help but do it. So saying something like that is really unhelpful. I think you know, that was part of my own journey, because you know, I didn't know these things were unhelpful until I actually was on the other end of receiving them. And then I was like, gosh, you know, just gosh, you can't say that. And then you know, as time has gone on and I've learned more about it and I've done my own sort of like inner work, what I've come to realize is actually sometimes people are not trying to be nasty, or they're not trying to make you upset or make you sad or make you feel like that. There's just a lack of education out there, which doesn't tell people about how they can support somebody else who's going through something like this. Like, the first thing I want to do all the time, as soon as somebody knows that, you know, Shivai is no longer in our life, is I want them to ask me his name. But I want to talk about Shivai as well. You know, and sometimes there's a bit of as soon as they find out that's happened, there's a bit of a clamp. They don't know what to say. Now I can see it in them now. I notice it in people. And so I just say it now. Oh yeah, his name was Shivai. His name was Shivai, and he was 8 months, and we did a lot of things. And then that gets me talking. And then I can see they're kind of warming to it as well, because they don't know what to say. So I think, you know, if you're somebody who has gone through, not somebody who's gone through that, but if you're somebody who knows somebody who's gone through it, you know, most of the time, the majority of the time, that person wants their baby to be acknowledged. And, you know, the first way that you can do them is, did you have a special name for them? Were they named? You know, so in case they weren't born and, you know, you miscarried, you know, or something like that. I remember some of the babies that we miscarried, we used to call the baby Bump and talk to the baby, like, and just say, hello, Mr. Bump. How are you today? You know, when he was or she was in my tummy. You know, so we used to sort of talk in that kind of way. So, you know, and it's just really nice to recall some moments that felt quite special.
So when you went through this, do you feel that you've got the support, like you had adequate support then? Do you think going forward, is there, like in today's age, is there more support? Is there less support? How would you kind of judge it? Would you think there's enough support out there?
I think you know, 7 years ago when Shivai died, and you know, the miscarriages happened almost up to 10 years ago, there wasn't enough out there for us. And if there was, it was quite hidden, or you know, if other people had experienced it, it wasn't as publicly spoken about back then. I mean, even now, you know, I'd say in the last 3 years, we've got better at sort of like talking about it much more publicly. And you know, there's a lot of people out there that are talking about their journey around baby loss, and or their journey around kind of, you know, motherhood or becoming or you know, with the intention of becoming a mother and stuff, and you know, and what that journey has been like, good and bad. So I think we're much more open about it now, and I'm, you know, hugely grateful to the people that come on to, like, you know, social media and all those platforms to really talk about it in a very raw, authentic and honest sort of way. Because I even think, like, with becoming a mum, I certainly wasn't told all the kind of parts of what it would be like to be a mum. Like, it's always been painted to me as being a wonderful, you know, journey in being pregnant, and then the labor and all that kind of stuff. Like, I've never been told about the trauma of, you know, having a premature baby, or what that would be like afterwards, and how I'd have to cope with it. And you know, that also added to, you know, my mental health, you know, during that time, because I had a bit of postnatal depression with Avi, and I kept questioning myself around, why am I just not happy to be a mum? Like, why do I feel really sad and tearful, and like I can't cope, and you know, I'm not confident in being a mum and stuff like that. And then even with the miscarriages, you know, going through the loss of those babies, I didn't know what to do, to be honest. I never went to see a therapist at that point. And you know, people around me were just saying, oh, just keep trying, you know. And I felt it so dismissive, but I also felt like, well, maybe I should just keep trying and stop complaining, you know. And maybe I'm being really ungrateful, because people were almost like saying it to me, that at least you've got one. And so it makes you start feeling like, maybe I am ungrateful, you know. I know now I'm not, you know. I know now that that was not the right thing for other people to say to me, which is why I'm so passionate about talking about baby loss in a bigger way, and the work that I do around that, because I think it's just, you know, if I can educate one person. I remember there was this person on Instagram, and she messaged me and she said, I saw your post a few days ago about what to say to somebody when they've lost a baby. And I was in a group and a class, and we were all talking about our experiences around motherhood, and this person said that they'd lost her baby, and she goes, it went dead quiet in the room. And she goes, I remember what you had written, and so I asked what her baby's name was, and that mother's face just lit up. And you know what, that was just one of many kind of messages that I get around stuff like this. And you know what, if when I put my videos out, or when I put my posts out about stuff like this, if just one person can make a difference in someone else's life, that's a good job done, in my opinion. And that's why I'm here doing it. You know, it's not for the publicity, it's not for the likes, it's just not for anything else. It's just about, there are just way too many people out there who are dealing with something, and if we can try and help someone along that way, and get their friends and family to also support and help them as well, then you know what, my job is done, really. I do think that, you know, several years ago we still weren't saying the right things, and there wasn't enough support out there, but I think we've got better at it. We've still got a long way to go in that. And I think the more that we can kind of find individuals that are doing or having those conversations publicly, and the more we can share that, the better. Because you know, none of us wanted to be a part of this baby loss group. Nobody kind of thinks that this will ever happen to them. It's the group that nobody wants to be a part of, but you find yourself a part of it, and then you're kind of like, okay, well, now what? And now how do I cope and help myself and help my immediate family get through this moment. And for me, one of the ways of healing through it and coping with it is talking about it publicly.
Yeah. Do you find that there was enough support for your husband? Because most of the time when things like this happen, all the focus is on the mum and not necessarily the dad and how he's coping. Does he need support? Because obviously everyone's got different ways of showing their grief, different ways of dealing with the grief. So, I mean, did you find that your husband, got the support that he needed, or do you think that's he needed a different kind of support?
I think professional support is out there.
Yeah.
But that's if you want to access it and use it yourself.
Yeah.
There was counseling support out there for him, and he did do some of that counseling, and it didn't really work for him, to be honest, and counseling didn't really work for me either. It worked for us as a family, for family counseling that we went through for Avi, and that therapy seemed to work for us as parents, but not as individuals. And I think again, there's many more fathers out there that are talking about the journey now. Certainly with SANS, they've got SANS United, the football club, which is all run by many fathers that have experienced baby loss at whatever stage. And I think that is a great platform for them to access if they want to be able to, be a part of a group where other people understand what they're going through and they want to talk about things. I just remember Karthik and I both, we wanted to desperately talk about Shivai. And sometimes we felt that there was nobody to talk to Shivai about. And so I feel like, it would have been nicer for Karthik as well if he had that support back then. And he's quite a private person, so he doesn't like publicly talking about these things, whereas I'm kind of okay to do that. And so he was very quiet, and he wanted to just keep his feelings to himself. And we both grieved really, really differently. Like there was days where I was like, just talk to me, just talk to me, just talk to me. But he didn't want to talk to me about it. He just wanted to grieve through it. I think he was worried that he was going to upset me, and I was worried that I was going to upset him. So our communication had, as a couple during that time, it became really restricted, really, really restricted. And it took us almost 3 years to open up after Shivai died, for us to sort of start addressing some of these very heavy areas that we had both been pushing down on and not let surface up. And so I mean, now we're in a much better place because we've let all of that erupt out and talk to each other about it. And we also know how each other's copes, on good days and not so good days. So, and we just allow each other to have that space to do what each other needs to do. And we do what we need to do for the kids in that moment. But I think the biggest lesson that we've had is that we need to help ourselves, and only we can help ourselves by either seeking help or taking advantage of somebody giving us the help for something. And I think now that again there's many more people talking about the journey out there, grandparents, mothers, fathers, and there's access to many more support sort of services as well, which makes it easier now for us to sort of access and get that help that we need. And also the friendships that have come from online, just connecting to each other and talking about our babies and talking about how we've been feeling.
So you're quite involved with the SANS charity. Do you want to talk a bit about what they do? I know you touched on the football that they do for the dads. What other things do they do? And if someone wanted to get involved, how do they get involved?
So SANS, with SANS, I'm an ambassador, and I'm also a board of trustee member. And, I just want to sort of say that I never had this game plan on becoming a board of trustee member with SANS. I mean, it wasn't part of my journey, it just kind of happened in that SANS was the first organization that I turned to when Shivai died. And I felt like, because nobody around me, I felt had gone through a baby loss. And when they were talking to me, with all due respect, I didn't feel like they understood what I was going through, and I didn't feel like I could connect talking to them either about what I was feeling. I felt like either I was going to give them more pain or I was going to experience more pain from it. And I remember thinking, I picked up the phone, I called the Child Bereavement Association, and I said, I need some therapy support for my son, Avi. And we were able to get onto some family counselling and therapy through that avenue. And that had started already. But then I felt like myself, I just wasn't getting that kind of support that I needed. And, I was seeing my doctor quite regularly, and my doctor was almost like sort of like, hinting towards sleeping tablets and antidepressants. And it was just not an option for me. I just did not want to go down that route. And I kept thinking to myself, there's got to be something different out there.
Yeah.
So SANS was one of the first charities that I found on Facebook. I found their support service, closed group. And I kind of went into that group. I asked to sort of join that group. And then I realized that there were so many other mothers like me who had experienced similar styles of loss or a baby dying. And I just remember reading that group, like a lot of the posts, and I was just, oh my God, yeah, she's talking about the same feelings that I'm having. And so that was when I kind of like just started my journey with SANS as a mother, not as an ambassador or anything like that. And I found a lot of their resources, their materials, their heightened sort of like campaign days that they do around Baby Loss Awareness Week and, SANS Awareness Month in June. I just found all of that, the materials that they were helping during that time, very, very helpful. And so I started using them myself. I started telling Garthik about them. I started telling other people that I was talking to or meeting who had gone through something similar about SANS. And I think that's the great thing about SANS, is that they also have a very they're very aware about kind of the different types of communities and what each community kind of does when there's a loss of a baby, and from all the rituals to the services, the funeral services, and the kind of impact. And they're doing a lot of work out there now to really help those communities as well, to support people within the community that are going through it. So kind of that's a little bit around what SANS does. They are a resource site that aims to help with the loss of a baby at any stage. There's their Facebook group, they have their website, they have their helpline. During since I've been an ambassador, we've been trying to do a lot more kind of cultural activities within the South Asian culture. So we've been sort of doing things around Shrad, which is in September, and we all know that's connected to the death of a loved one, and there's a particular day that is relevant for children and babies. And so sort of like bringing SANS services into the community, but also at the same time acknowledging the things that communities are kind of going through or are dealing with, or their own cultural backgrounds as well, and being mindful of that in a respectful kind of way. So I would say that that's kind of what my role has been as an ambassador. And then as a board of trustee member, that sort of came along after I was an ambassador. And it just, the opportunity came up, and I just remember feeling and thinking to myself, I believe in SANS. I believe in the work that they do. I know the impact that they have for parents for parents who've lost a baby. And, maybe this is kind of my way of carrying on with, being Shivai's mom and being able to talk about him much more, but also his legacy, which is, to help make a difference in that space, so that, one day when I'm gone, I leave the world in a better space to where I found it. And, supporting, because unfortunately we would love to live in a world where no baby dies, but babies are still dying. And, in that journey, if there's something that I can do to sort of help shape and influence, where, at a board level, where we can, influential in sort of like key decisions and stuff like that, then, that really appealed to me. And that's kind of partly why I became a board of trustee members. And then, with the ambassador role, it's working with the SANS team around the different opportunities that we've got to sort of really share what they do and to help communities have access to their services as well.
Yeah, I think that's amazing, because it will hopefully open dialogue a bit more, and it will encourage people to come forward and talk about what they're going through, or at least seek help, because I think that's the biggest thing. There's a lot of people out there who just don't seek the help, suffer in silence. And I think if they have someone where they feel that understands them, understands what they're going through, understands, like you said, the rituals, the traditions, it make them more comfortable to able to come forward. So yeah, I completely agree. So like around baby loss, there's a lot of myths. I think there's so many myths that we can think of. Is there any that you can kind of shine a light on? How much truth is any of them, if there is any truth in them? Are there any that you can think of?
I'm not sure about myths. I just think sometimes comments are unhelpful, which help to promote these myths. And I think just everybody should be very mindful of what they speak before they say it. So just if you think something, just think twice before you say it. I remember there were a few people saying that she's working full time, that's why she's had miscarriages. No, that wasn't the reason why I had miscarriages. I had a miscarriage because that pregnancy was not a viable pregnancy to continue, and there were reasons behind that. It was nothing to do with because I was working full time or anything like that. And I think comments like that are just very unhelpful. I remember some mature ladies in the community kept saying to me, don't wash your hair, and things like that, because it's not very good. And I just kind of feel like maybe there's a place for kind of why they say that, and that's totally fine. But don't force your opinions on somebody else, and then make them feel guilty about an event has happened because you did this. And I think that's not fair to do on somebody. So I just feel like just with myths, just don't say them. Just don't think before you speak.
Especially in our South Asian culture, I feel there's a lot of superstition around pregnancy, around birth. And I know I was up against that as well, like you said, don't wash your hair and things like that. I mean, for a new mom to go into motherhood with those superstitions, I think you always start your journey with these things at the back of your head, what if? And I think that's quite detrimental to a lot of moms out there, because if anything does go wrong, they almost start judging themselves and feeling guilty themselves. Have I done anything that I shouldn't have that has caused this? Could I have, maybe not gone through it? So what advice would you give to anyone, any of the new moms, anyone who's suffered baby loss? Is there any advice that you'd like to give them on how to cope better, how to deal with things better, what their mindset should be?
I think when I kind of went through Shivai dying, and when I think back to kind of the miscarriages as well, I didn't really look after myself, if I'm honest. After I'd had the miscarriages, I had let kind of people sort of like almost dictate to me that oh, you can have a second one, you can have another one, you can try harder, you, or it'll happen, just keep trying. And so I didn't process each loss when they happened. And because my body and my mind was in that state, I just kept going like a machine, if you know what I mean. I didn't really kind of think about what the grief that I was grieving at that time. And then obviously I had Shivai, and that was, and after he died, that was the first point that I actually started to look back at, all these moments where I had experienced some form of grief or something, or a form of loss, and I hadn't really dealt with it. So I started to sort of deal with it a lot later. And I wish I'd dealt with it earlier, because not for any other reason except for, in my own mind, maybe I might have been able to look after myself better in that time. And obviously that's when kind of meditation came my way, and I went into a coaching group, and I looked to be coached around that, and that was when I started to realize, actually, all this time I've been saying such negative talk to myself, that my body is not good, that I'm never going to be able to deliver a healthy child, and I had such negative talk that I was telling myself. And I feel like I should have just not paid attention to that negative talk as much, and I wish I'd kind of taken that position to look after myself earlier. But I feel like maybe back then I was just thinking I was feeling guilty of doing that, because I always kept thinking that, I need to take care of my family, and I need to take care of Karthik, and I just need to have another baby because my other son needs a sibling, so I just kept going. But what I wasn't doing in that journey is I was not looking after myself. And that's the biggest lesson that I've learned, is that to be able to look after other people, I need to look after myself first. Like, you have to fill your cup up before you start serving from an empty cup.
Yeah.
I wish I had taken care of myself a lot longer and not felt guilty about it. And, because I certainly don't feel guilty about it anymore. I actively do a lot of things for myself. We do things as a family as well. So martial arts has now become a big part of our life. My son has been doing it for 7 years. He does Kung Fu. And, part of the reason that we put him into Kung Fu is because we thought, it would help his body, mind, and his physical sense to be able to cope with a lot of these things like breathing and yoga and, physical strength. It's all kind of combined in martial arts.
Yeah.
And so he's been doing that journey for 7 years now. And, Karthik and I started the martial arts journey last year. And Karthik turned also to exercising as a way of him being able to cope with his own mental health and his own well-being. And for me, exercise came a lot later. I went down the route of meditation, and that was what's helped me to cope through this whole time, and journaling. And I have I've got, this is my gratitude journal, which is what I write in every single day. I write 3 things. You can see some of them here. I've written in there. I write 3 things every single day about what I'm most grateful for, and that's that's a gratitude journal. That's kind of a way of living a life of gratitude. And it helps me to focus on the good things rather than kind of things that I want to let define me, which are maybe bad. So and when I say good things, what I mean by that is, in my journal I might have something like, I saw a really lovely picture of Shivai today, and that made me smile, and I'm grateful because I had that picture with him to make me smile. Or it could be I got reminded today of the time, like today I might write down that I got reminded today of we used to call the baby bump, the miscarriages that we had, each one of them we used to call bump one, or whatever. And that makes me smile, actually, now, even though it is a moment that was quite sad for me.
Yeah.
And I still miss, and I wonder what those babies would have been like. It just reframes my thinking a little bit, and just helps me focus on some of the better parts of life, rather than not better parts of life, but what I'm going to take from that situation, rather than I don't want to be sad. And that's the biggest thing, that I don't want to be sad, like I was before, because even though the situation was traumatic, and it was sad, and it was lonely, what I've come to realize is that actually I don't want to be sad about it anymore. I don't want to cry about it anymore. I just want to think back at those babies, and think back to Shivai, and just focus on doing some really good stuff out there in his name, and helping as many people as I can, and just really like embracing life, because he just had 8 months, and those babies weren't even born to experience a life, and here I am, and I have a life. I'm here. So I kind of owe it to my babies, and I owe it to myself to live that life that they never had. And in that journey, if I can do some good, then that's great. And if I can spread some fun and laughter in my own life, and in my family's life, and in people that watch me, then that's good for me as well. Because when I'm gone, I want my kids to look back and say, what, mum went through a lot of things, but what, she always made us feel happy. And I want to leave them with happy memories of me, and not leave them with sad moments of me. So yeah,
I love that. You're leaving your legacy, but in a positive light. I think I love
that. And a lot of that is driven by my children. A lot of that is driven by my children, is that Karthik and I actively talk about our deaths, actively talk about us dying. Like, we make it so normal sometimes in front of like the kids, so that if ever it did happen, it's not going to be a shock to them, to their system, and they know exactly what we would have wanted, how we would want them to continue with their lives, which is to kind of like just know that we were always there, that we made their lives as best as we could, and that we left some really good happy memories with them, and also for them not to be sad and carry on just as happily in their lives without us. So yeah, that's
I mean, even with myself, for example, my eldest is 8, and my second is 5, and we've had that conversation many times, and it's almost like they've understood that whatever, because in Hinduism, whatever's born has to die, and they've got that concept now. So even when we have a death in the family, because like over COVID we had a few, and we had like our dog passed away last year, and literally they took it on so well. Here's me as a mother thinking, oh no, are they going to be able to cope? And it was really funny, because my son would actually come up to me and say to me, why are you sad? Whatever's born has to die. And I'm like, you're 7 and you're giving me that knowledge, and that you're teaching me that there's no point in dwelling on it. Take the positives and move forward. And I think that's really good to instill that in your kids from an early age. And I just think it just works wonders for their outlook, their mindset, everything. I think it's a great way of getting them to understand that, you do need to just pick yourself up, move on. And
the other word I would use is resilience is really important. Resilience is really, really important in this. And the biggest thing that I've been shocked by is the resilience of my children. And it almost like it almost gives you the strength and the power to carry on as well. I mean, I'm not a superstitious person, but the only time that I do get a bit kind of like, I just know Shivai's out there. I know he's with me all the time. And, I see double digit sort of angel numbers all the time, 11, 11, 16, 16, 13, 13. And, you know, Avi always says to me, oh, but mum, that's just a number on the phone, or that's just a number on the microwave or the oven. I'm like, I'm telling you, he's with me, because I see them almost every day.
Yeah.
Almost every day I will see something, or I will be thinking about something, or I'll be thinking about a decision, or I'll be thinking about, oh, should I do this or should I do that? And then I'll be like, you know what, I'm going to see a number today, and I know it's going to tell me. And I'll turn around and the oven clock will say 16:16.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll be like, okay, that's it. I know that was my decision. I need to do that. And I know that, you know, I always, maybe that's my coping mechanism. I don't know. Yeah. But when I see a double rainbow, or I see a rainbow, or I see these angel numbers, it uplifts me.
Yeah.
Like as if I know that just Shivai is just there with me. So I like to cope in the way that I don't believe that he's gone. I just think that he's just gone to the next realm, and that there are 7-8 realms, and he's just climbing up them. And that's it. And it sounds funny if I say it and if I think about it, but I always say to people, and Karthik and I talk about this very regularly, that when we get to the gates of heaven and we knock on that door, you know, I always have this imagination that the doors will open and Shivai will be standing there. And the first things he'll say to me is, Mum, what did you do with your life? And I said, I've got to have an answer for him. I've got to have a proper answer. And I think that drives me in just making this life count, because I just know he was just so short-lived by his life that, you know, we just have to make the best of the life that we've got.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Just before you go, where can people contact Sands if they need to get in touch? Should they contact you? What's the best way?
So you can get in touch with me through my Instagram, KSAVI Joshi, and I can direct you. I get a lot of DMs directly coming through to me. Otherwise, there's the Sands website. If you just Google Sands Baby Loss Charity, you'll find it through there. They're also on Facebook as well as a support group. They have a helpline as well. So there's lots of places where you can access information and materials. And, you know, there's also information and materials in, you know, different languages as well, if English is not your first language. So, yeah.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much, Raki, for having me.
Amazing. And I think if anyone's got any questions, do send them in. You can forward them on. Maybe can do like
I'm really happy
to
answer them. Yeah, really happy to.
But yeah, I hope you've all found that really interesting and you've taken something from that. You have a wonderful rest of the day, and
Thank you.
Speak to you soon.